Next on my list here is Ms. Fry to discuss 750.
She was in the hallway. She was in the hallway. Just saw her in the hallway a minute ago.
30 lashes, Phyllis.
There she is.
I do apologize. Thank you for waiting. So sorry.
Hi, Phyllis.
Really,
Give your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, Council. I'm Phyllis Fry, 275 Date Palm Road in Vero Beach. I just have one announcement. Stephanie Austin was scheduled to speak, and her father is gravely ill today, and so she sends her apologies, and we send our prayers. And Rosemary Wilson has asked to speak in her place, so just wanted to say that in advance. And good morning. On this day, we're going to make history. On this day, you'll decide the future of our community. Your decision will determine how and where we live. You'll be remembered by your children and grandchildren for the choices that we make today. Abraham Lincoln said, quote, "I'm a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts." End quote. In 1925, when Indian River County was formed, it was because we had fought for years against the control that Fort Pierce exerted over us. Our founders initiated one of the most bitter fights ever waged in the Senate. They were resolute in their desire for our independence and home rule. Henceforth, they've given us a beautiful template to follow. In the American tradition, we've worked with our locally elected officials and created an incomparable place to live. You have only to drive over the Alma-Lee-Loy Bridge to see the beauty and the way of life we've preserved. Through local stewardship, we've protected the environment and continue to do so through citizens' initiatives. We've designed our own growth patterns. Our pristine parks and beaches render our city of trees the treasure of the East Coast. We have governed ourselves well. Our community, indeed our country, was based upon one principle: virtue. Because the Founding Fathers understood that virtuous people can govern themselves, that virtuous people need not have thousands of layers of government regulations placed upon them. They do not need to be governed from without, because they are governed from within. Big government is a failure of virtue. Who are we as a community? We are compassionate people. Our neighborhoods are culturally rich and diverse. As caring neighbors, we help others. The list of charitable and civic organizations and churches is long. We give our money and volunteer our time to education, to the poor, to the elderly, to children and those in need. Jesus said, "Give charitably." We do. What he did not say is that the government should take what we have and designate it where they see fit. As I noted before, we are capable of governing ourselves. We value our locally elected council members and commissioners. We have entrusted to you the sacred duty of protecting Indian River County and Vero Beach from outside influences. We have entrusted you to represent us and protect our way of life. We've relied upon you to protect what we have worked so very hard to create and preserve. What you have achieved is commendable. It is worth saving for the children and the grandchildren, but we also owe it to our parents and grandparents who sacrificed and pioneered and worked for it. Surely you will not empower now those who would insinuate themselves from outside our area to decide how our children, our grandchildren, and you will live. Surely you will not relinquish our rights or yours to unelected bureaucrats, unvetted by us appointees, central planners, and regional government ideologues unanswerable to us. You would re-engineer our community into something we no longer recognize and do not want, as evidenced by hundreds of signatures by residents in our petition that are still coming in, and who, by their very presence in this chamber, and those who could not be here today, demonstrate against what we will not have. Last year, in order to educate ourselves, we attended a design charrette presented by the group called 750, meaning control of 7 Florida counties within 50 years. excuse me, it was here that they demonstrated, in their own words, their plan, and I quote, to bring millions of passengers by mass transit from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, and Orlando to use our beaches and our parks, end quote. Whose vision is this? Not we, the people of Vero Beach. Dare we use historic case studies to prove the crime and drugs that would come with such a plan? Their published mission in the local newspaper was, and I quote again, to control development patterns in housing and transportation. By using HUD, EPA, and DOT grants, our hard-earned dollars, to enforce demographic and density population quotas, we will be left with a transit village. These government-mandated human settlements consist of clusters of high-density population, HUD, low-income, stack-and-pack high-rises located near mass transit in our old downtown area. One of the first things to be done is to redesign our streets, which is already being proposed. A rezoning of our downtown area will help set the stage for their sustainable community through the Southeast Florida Regional Partnership Sustainable Communities HUD grant initiative known as 750. Under their new rezoning laws, existing businesses will be unable to afford the new permits or meet the new building codes and will go out of business and succumb to eminent domain. No matter what they tell you today, they will, in the end, be unaccountable to you. Allow me to quote a recent published comment by a 750 supporter, quote, "If you do not have a seat at our table, you're going to end up as the meal." Is that a threat? Are they intending to punish us for being independent, free thinkers, free enterprisers, resourceful, and self-sufficient capitalists? This group seeks to circumvent the structures and policies of our local government. This group intends to enforce density population and demographic quotas. This group intends to federalize our living spaces. This group will destroy our sovereignty through HUD, EPA, and DOT grants that erode our capitalist system with their government handouts that bring harm to free enterprise. This is not economic prosperity. These sustainable communities are being forced under federal central planning upon us, they hope, without our knowledge, without our consent, without our vote, but with our tax dollars. The 750 group doesn't care about us or our core values. Their bottom line, while destroying the integrity of our community, is to fight for their government jobs while we fight for our freedom and property rights. And if you feel that you haven't been completely and fully transparent with us about their plan, let's not fall prey to having to pass it in order to find out what's in it. If you are curious about the original document mandating these sustainable communities that they be established across the United States, for the record, this group really began at the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit in 1992. I refer you to Bill Clinton's President's Council on Sustainable Communities, signed into executive order in 1993. It was signed previously by H.W. Bush in 1992, and subsequently signed by President Obama, also into executive order without congressional approval. This is dangerous precedent. Under this document, and I quote, "Single-family homes are deemed unsustainable. Land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals. Private property contributes to social injustice," end quote. The goal of the President's Council on Sustainable Communities is to tax us out of our privately owned, wasteful homes and, using our tax dollars, put us into sustainable communities, clusters of dwellings near mass transit so that we do not have to use our cars with their dirty carbon footprints. Look at the 750 website. It is all about sustainable communities. And it flies beneath the radar under the guise of environmentalism. If they have covered their paper trail to the original document, it doesn't matter. The blueprint is precisely the same. No coincidence there. The plan is being implemented in every city, county, and state in the United States, and yes, globally. And it is being fought increasingly by citizens across the country. Lists upon lists of cities and states. Alabama has embellished it entirely. There's a wall of honor. I would like us to be on it. As an American, I'm offended that my right to choose how and where I live, and the right to shape the future of my own community, or to own private property or have the freedom to drive a car when and where I want, would be denied. It is not an America that emulates the principles and values of our Constitution. We, the people of Vero Beach, are for low-density population, local decision-making, home rule, small local governance, fiscal responsibility, the right to determine how and where we live, and above all, the right to private property ownership. We will not allow ourselves to become federalized, nationalized, nor regionalized, nor have our freedom of home rule denied. Our county commissioners, by majority vote, have wisely decided to withdraw from 750. We therefore respectfully request that you, our Vero Beach City Council members, exercise your right under Clause 12 and sever all commitments and agreements between the City of Vero Beach and the Agents for Sustainable Communities initiative known as 750 in order to ensure that we retain control of our own planning rights, the right to choose how and where we live, and right to private property ownership. If you truly represent us, and I believe you do, you will vote no to 750. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Phyllis. Phyllis, did you have a petition you wanted to present? Did you have a petition you wanted to present? If you give it to Ms. Vach for the record. Ms. Vach.
Phyllis, does the petition list who is a city resident and who is a resident of the county? So it just lists addresses. Okay. So each of those would have to go back to verification.
Certified, yeah.
It just helps if, in the future, if people want to do petitions, it's helpful if you check a box if you're a city resident or check a box for a county. Otherwise, it's an incredibly lengthy process to go back to the address rolls to find out where everyone is.
Next I have on my list here is Ms. Austin.
She's not here.
Oh, she's not,
Ms.
you're
Wilson,
going to,
let's wait for her.
Rosemary? Hi, Rosemary.
Hi there, how are you?
What was that all about, Phyllis?
Rosemary B. Wilson, 1490 Fifth Avenue. Thank you for allowing us to speak. 750 is not a common sense idea. These carrots come to you from our United States federal government, the Environmental Protection Agency, Housing and Urban Development, and the Department of Transportation, all of which, through our current administration, support Agenda 21, i.e. 750. The 750 Roadshow of October 25th was insulting to our intelligence. The technology of Delphiying participants backfired. 750 is an insidious concept to entice local governments to take the carrots and the money, a practice ongoing throughout the United States. The notion that it is common sense to take advantage of 750 to progress is nonsense. Indian River County and Vero Beach have always communicated and cooperated for the long term with our neighboring counties. Long-range planning is part of the American plan, has always been. Please deny Big Brother the attempt to change our lifestyles. We can progress without 750.
Thank you. Ms. Cook? And I understand you will be back to talk about the overlay later on, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Good
My name-
morning.
My name is Nancy Cook. I'm a 50-year-plus resident of Indian River County. American, freedom-loving, constitutionalist, not a party affiliate, not speaking to this issue as a political issue, but as an issue that affects everyone who lives here. I think that small government is always better than big government. I was listening to the presentation, which Marcella did very well. She always does. But I kept thinking while she was speaking about regionalism as it's affecting the world. And I was thinking about the EU. It's like a giant regional collection, and it was all to help the economies of all those countries and to bind them all together so that they could have common good and compete in the global world, but it didn't work out that way. And regionalism is a global plan, and the problem, as I see it, is that there are so many people that are desperately trying to get out of it. So I don't think that's something that, without knowing exactly what they are offering us, that we want to get involved in. When I was thinking about the road show and all of the words that describe Vero Beach, they're what all the counties south of us would like. So I don't know if when you mix us all together and you pour us all in one, how that works for us. We're, with the help of council people like you that are elected and that are very available to all of us, Vero Beach has stayed amazing as a place to visit or work or live. So when you talk about what they could do for the tourist industry, I question that, because how can you sell a region as big as from Indian River County down to Monroe County? How can you sell that on a global plan to get tourists here? Our Chamber of Commerce is phenomenal. They are dedicated to bringing those tourists here to Vero Beach, and that helps Vero Beach. But if you bring them to Miami or Fort Lauderdale, I don't think it really does benefit us. Anything that 750 comes up with in their plan, even after we have said no thank you for Indian River County, anything they come up with, we're still open and available to whatever would be good for us here in the city of Vero Beach. So I can't not repeat this. In my business, I get an opportunity to talk to a lot of people about a lot of things, and a woman came in and asked me, what is 750? And I said, well, it's a plan to regionalize this area from Indian River County down to Key West, and so that we would have future planning in common. And she said, oh my God, that's what they did in my home country. And I said, oh, where are you from? And she said, Greece. And the problem was that the regionalism was appointing people that said they weren't making any regulations, but they were. And it became corrupt. As you know, if you've been looking at what's going on in Greece, it became incredibly corrupt, not accusing anyone of anything, but it leaves it open if you're not elected and a small enough body to be accountable to the people who elect you. So when I think about the funding coming from HUD, which is in charge of housing, and DOT, which is in charge of transportation, and EPA, which is in charge of the environment, every aspect of it. And I think that right now, those organizations are making, by regulation, without benefit of Congress or any voting, they're making regulations that are becoming law, that with those three organizations, you can control every single aspect of human life. You can, the EPA can designate, they already have a map about the corridor through the center of Florida that is going to be dedicated to animals and no or little human accessibility to it. Well, that would take private property rights, which is the bedrock of our country. I mean, how can you do that? And plus the fact, as a Christian, and I believe what God said, God gave man dominion over animals, and I love animals. I wouldn't do anything to hurt one of them. But I think humans have a right to the space they need more than animals have a right to have all the space they need, and we don't. And those are some of the unintended consequences that can come out of participating in regionalism, trying to meld us with counties that are much bigger, have much different issues than we do. And like I said, I don't know the database that they're planning to create. I don't know if that's only going to be available to any anyone who participates in 750, or if it's going to be, if you can Google it, you can have the benefit of the database. We don't have to join that organization to do that. So I just ask you, please think very carefully, because what you're doing here today can have huge ramifications, and a lot of them we don't know because the plan is vague, sounds good, but like I said, it has the potential to put the foot in the door to change our being able to relate to you and our own planning department. I don't know why the Southeast Regional Planning Council wouldn't usurp the priority of Vero Beach Planning Council, which I want to keep in place. So we have someone to talk to, there's someone to deal with the issues. And not that we won't make any mistakes, we will, but we'll fix them ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I have Ms. Dorothy Francis next. Good morning.
Good morning.
And your name and address for the record, please.
I am Dorothy Francis. I'm currently at 558 6th Lane in Vero Beach, but moving to the city. So I'm actually moving today. So I do bring props, just like Rosemary Wilson. Props. I want first to apologize, Mr. Mayor and Council, for reacting unfavorably when Marcella made a comment. So please accept my apology.
Thank you.
I do want to thank you for giving me the opportunity just to address you. I am obviously strongly against 750. I believe, excuse me, I think the marketing campaign that 750 presented is pretty slick. It's really good. I think it's changed up a little bit from the campaign that they put before the county commissioners, because I was there, many of us were, and like Nancy just mentioned, we had reservations about that database. I think we were told at that meeting that not everybody would have access to that. I don't know the specifics about that, but today Marcella did say that we would all have access to that database, okay? That's one thing. And so that caused me to react unfavorably to some of the other things that she said relative to the government being involved or not involved in 750. So that's how I feel about that. I think some of the language that 750 uses is really code for their dream agenda. Now, you've heard the specifics mostly from Phyllis Fry, and you will from others. I am not speaking to specifics of 750 nor Agenda 21. I just fear it. This camel's nose is under our tent. And if this council today does not bump that camel on the nose, is Vero Beach big enough to shove it out? I really think we all live here because of the beauty of Vero Beach, the serenity, the low population, the very productive, talented councils that we elect. Unfortunately, I lived outside, couldn't elect you, but I will. In any case, if you really want to live their dream, I say simply pack your bags and go south. You can go right to their concrete jungle, okay? There are barriers everywhere, dense population, high rises, and let me do what the Europeans do. When they have billboards, you've all traveled. You've seen the same mention, the same billboard, logo, 100 times. How about if I say traffic, 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 traffic? Parking meters, parking meters, parking meters, parking meters. It's coming. The camels got them on their saddlebags. My message really is short and sweet. I hope it's effective in swaying you to retain Vero Beach's sovereignty, our freedom, our serenity, our property rights. Preserve our town. I love our inch-long parades. We have one ambulance, one band, one fire truck. We're not Macy's. We don't need to be. Love the city. Thank you all for listening to me. And please vote no.
Thank you. I have Susan Mile. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
And your name and address for the record, please.
It's Susan Meal, and
Meal?
it's
Excuse me.
131 Laurel Oak.
Thank you.
I'm in Indian River Shores, but I moved here in '94, and off and on, it's been a permanent residence. And my view of this comes from having lived here, but also in other parts of the country periodically. And it's a history that a few years ago I was introduced to the Sustainable Development Programs in Henderson County, North Carolina. And this is not, 750 is not a unique program. Up in North Carolina, we also have a HUD Transportation EPA grant, much smaller, because our market is smaller, but with the same goals and objectives. And actually, there, we educated our county commissioners, and after agreeing to participate, they rescinded their vote to participate, and they aren't participating now. But that brings us to what's happening around the country. We don't have a lot of evidence of what 750 is going to do right now, but we do know what they say on their website. But we do know also what's happening in other areas. And I just wanted to mention that a few years ago in Houston County, Minnesota, their county commission adopted a sustainable development plan, and a group of residents have presented the county with a notice of intent to sue, because even though they had petitions and evidence and everything else about what this was going to involve, the county commissioners would not stop the plan. So their intent to pursue letter includes the fact that the plan violates Minnesota's state constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and that the county's implementation plan exceeds the authority granted by the state. And I think it's important here that we notice that a lot of these issues, they mention the state because this system goes from the federal government around the state to the local and regional level. And there's a deliberate bypass of the state because the money this program wants the money to go directly to the communities and do with it what they have designed, and avoid the state asking the questions and saying what's allowed and what's not allowed. An example in this county in Minnesota is that the ownership interests of land are being impinged upon. A landowner wanted to replace an old mobile home with a new one on the same site that already had the well and septic tanks. They were already in place, but the county said no and forced the landowner to locate the new mobile home across the road on land used for crops, where a new well and septic tank had to be installed. They don't take over the land, literally owning it, but they take what you can do with your land and control it. Then this also isn't new from a standpoint of sustainable development. We know there's talk about the UN. I don't have I'm not scared that the UN's going to come in tomorrow and tell us what to do here, which is what the 750 website seems to say happened and was the fear at the Indian River County Commissioners meeting. That's not my concern, but I do know that for 30 and 40 years, people around this country have been trying to implement sustainable development. Santa Cruz, California, provides a roadmap for what we can expect. Back in 1972, the Santa Cruz Director of Planning told the Board of Supervisors that in order to gain public transit patronage, they would have to bait people with a carrot and discipline them with a stick. Make it easy to use with reliable service and improved scheduling, and it will be attractive. But if that doesn't work, make auto usage difficult, costly, and inconvenient. Permit road congestion to increase. So for over 30 years, Santa Cruz has done just that. And now to remedy the problem, they've introduced a transit corridor plan. And they purchased a 32-mile rail line. And there's nothing wrong with their plan for walking, biking, and trains, but it's not honestly financed, and it's not at the sake, and it's at the sake of mobility. The voters have overwhelmingly been rejecting this purchase, but went ahead anyway. Tax money will be used to force mass transit on the residents. And that's one of the things I look at when I look at all of these sustainable community projects. I'm sure, 750 talks about transportation choices. What transportation choices do we want here that they want in South Florida? And who's going to pay for them? Because that's where the rubber hits the road, literally. It's the money involved. Will our county be pooling money